bavette. When I started, they didn't have it in the shop at all, and it takes a lot of time, getting people to try it. And those sort of cuts, once they've tried them and you tell them how to cook them properly, and we go through a hell of a lot of bavette now, and it's a beautiful cut as well. It's an easy sell.
This is the Australian Butchers Guild podcast, brought to you by Meat and Livestock Australia, the podcast for passionate butchers.
G'day, I'm Doug Piper and welcome to another episode of the Australian Butchers Guild podcast. I'd like to say thanks to everyone for supporting the podcast and tuning in each month. I trust that you're picking up some useful information and a few business tips along the way, judging by the feedback we're getting. A big thanks to all our guests for sharing all their insights and knowledge to everybody out there. Today I'm catching up with a very talented butcher called Micky Peacock. Micky made the journey to Australia from England a few years ago. He liked it so much he now calls Australia home. Why wouldn't he? What a great place to live. It wasn't long after arriving in Oz, Micky became an integral part of the iconic Victor Churchill Butchery and eventually working his way up to be head butcher there. Every day Micky would be there in the shop skillfully preparing some of the country's finest quality meats, some of the big brands that we often hear about, and they'd be going on display behind the gold and glass fridge doors. Micky's since moved on after nearly 10 years with Victor Churchill's and stayed in the eastern suburbs and now manages a small but popular butcher shop in Randwick that's been around for quite some time. Now it's time to speak to the man himself. G'day, Micky.
Hey, Doug. How you doing?
I'm very well, mate. How are you today?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Can't complain.
Can't complain. So, Micky, whereabouts are you? You're in Sydney somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. So, I live in Little Bay, but I work in Randwick. Yeah, Little Butchery in Randwick, Origin Village Butchery.
Origin Village Butchery. Tell us a little bit about the Origin Village, mate. What's the story behind that shop?
It's been a butchery for 20, 30 years. Very, very long time.
Yeah.
And it was Terry Wright's butchery before that. Origin's been there for about 5.5 years now. So Chris is the owner of Origin Meats. He's got a wholesale operation based over in Botany, and he opened his retail store 5 years or so. And I've been with him now for 2 years, running that butchery.
Yeah, right. Okay. So originally from England?
Originally from England, yeah. I came over when I was 21 in 2012. I was sponsored to come out. I was butchering back in the UK before then, so I was butchering from when I left school. Well, yeah, 15, 16. I was sponsored to come over, and that's it, really. The rest is history. I did a 4-year visa, and then, the visas have changed now. I'm fortunate. It's a lot harder now. I could literally just do my 4-year visa and then go for residency. So, yeah, I've been a resident now for God knows how long.
An official Aussie.
Yeah, but nearly. I'm about to do my citizenship.
Okay, right. Oh, good on you, mate.
Yeah.
Where you first started in England, mate? What was it? What sort of shop was that? Was that a little butcher shop or a big one? It's like a strip shop or in a shopping mall or something?
Where I actually started in a supermarket. Yeah, I started in a supermarket, and so in this supermarket in the UK, they've got like a market street where, at the back of the store, it's got your butchery, bakery, fishmonger, deli. And in all honesty, I didn't have much interest in food whatsoever. I was just told I needed to get a job from my dad.
Like most of us.
Yeah. I was like, so that was what I first found. I got the choice between doing bakery, fishmonger, or butchery, and my initial thought was, well, I do not want to go home smelling like fish every day, so I chose butchery. Yeah, and I've never looked back since then. I've been really fortunate. Like my first head butcher I worked under, he was really good, very passionate, ex-chef as well. So I started learning that side of it straight away, which was great, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the hands-on part and the creativity that you could do with it. So I did that for about a year, and then it was very limited what you could do. Obviously, in the supermarket, that there's not much whole breakdown. It's basically just you learn your portion cutting, and that's about it, really. So I did really want to learn breaking bodies and proper butchery. So I left there, and I started my apprenticeship at like a little small boutique sort of butchery in a village just outside where I lived, and I was there for 4 years. It was brilliant butchery, and they were, again, I moved on to them, and they were brilliant. They helped me a lot. They put me into loads of different training things and awards, things like that. So I was there for 4 years until I left for Australia.
We went to England quite a few years ago, and we were up in Wales, I think it was. And some of the butcher shops we saw there were fantastic. Like in little villages, the butchers, like you said, are very passionate, a bit like a lot of Australian butchers are today. But they just had, it was very, very professional, and I don't know, it's a completely different sort of feel when you walk into a butcher shop in England as opposed to Australia. I don't know why, I don't know what it is, but it was just very welcoming, very homely, warming, if anything, I think would be probably the right word, because it just felt comfortable walking in there and just seeing what they had on offer, plus also the history. A lot of the guys used to had a lot of history about their butcher shops over there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, where I worked, it's called Eagles of Deddington, and it's such a lovely little village, proper little market village, markets on the Saturday, and it was very different to Australia in terms of, I had to wear a shirt, tie, trousers, shoes. I had to be clean shaven every day. If you wasn't, the store manager would make you go into the bathroom and shave. Even when I was 16, I couldn't do anything anyway, but
made the effort.
Yeah, and it's like I said to you the other day, the guys that trained me, one of them was in their 70s. They'd butchered since they were 15, and he had queues around the corner at Christmas just waiting for him. I was lucky, very lucky to work under those old school guys and learn that side of it. So it was hard to leave, but I really wanted to, first and foremost, I wanted to travel, and I was just fortunate that I was able to travel with being sponsored as well.
Yeah, it's a big step to make. Many years ago, I don't know how long ago it was, but you probably missed out, mate. A lot of people were sent over here anyway from England. Didn't have to pay their way. They just got shipped out here. Didn't have a choice. And you wanted to come here. What's the go?
Everyone else is spewing for that now. I'm sure everybody wants to come out here.
What can I do wrong? Steal some bread? Yeah, you're going to Australia. So what have you noticed in the difference between the two countries, between Australian butchery and English butchery? Is there anything that stands out that a lot of Aussie butchers should be doing or could change in the way that they run their shops that you've noticed?
Not really. I mean, they're very similar in a lot of ways, very similar and very different at the same time. In terms of like style of butchery, everything's done on the hang a lot more here, whereas, everything's pretty much, from my experience anyway, everything was done on the block, and pretty minor thing, you pick it up over a little bit of time. Terminologies are very similar. There's a few slight different terminologies which are different. I remember moving out here, and we call Scotch fillets, we call them ribeyes, and then ribeye on the bone, like very, very minimal difference. But when I started over here, I was running down and get one of the guys that asked for, coming up with the wrong thing. And like, what are you doing? Back downstairs.
I suppose in Australia it depends on what side of the border you're on as to what some of the steaks are called. Across the board, they're all very much the same sort of names. But I think in New South Wales, we refer to, Scotch fillet as Scotch fillet normally. And I think that's what you'll see in most butcher shops on the meat labels. But I think in Queensland, they're rib fillet or ribeye. I'm not too sure what it is in Victoria, probably much the same as New South. But there are just those little differences, but obviously still the same.
They're very small over. I mean, then you throw the American terminologies in the mix, and it just gets even more confusing, doesn't it? But
bottom round, top round.
Yeah. But yeah, on a whole, honestly, now I've been butchering out here longer than I was in the UK now, so half of that I'll probably forgot. I go by Australian terms now, really.
You came out here, you worked with some fantastic butchers at Victor Churchill's. You had an opportunity there, and painfully had to make the decision to make a move and do something a little bit different, I imagine, to Origin.
Yeah, I mean, I was there for 9 years or so. Great experience. You worked with some great butchers, worked with some great chefs. Picked up a hell of a lot of knowledge that I wouldn't have otherwise. And then I got the head butcher role, which was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. After 10 years, I just needed a change, and I needed a little break as well. I left on very good terms. I still speak to them all. I took a month or so off, and then kind of wasn't too sure what I wanted to do. I just knew that I needed a change. And then my partner Elka, who is a butcher as well, she was working for Origin Meat, working in the retail operation there, and she told Chris, the owner, that I wasn't really doing much. So I caught up with him just for a coffee, and we had a chat and got along really well. And he explained what he wanted to do with the shop and what direction he wanted to go in, and that interested me, and it was like a new, as much as I loved it at Churchill, towards the end I kind of thought, oh, I'm not learning anything new really. It's just getting a little bit mundane for me, not from anybody's fault, but just I just needed a change. And Chris said that he said, oh, I'll open you up to the business side, I'll show you more, how to run a business as well. And he's pretty much given me a blank canvas at the shop, saying, you do what you want with it within reason. Yeah, and we'll work together in that way. So, I've learned a lot again, so it kept me interested, Yeah,
that's the main thing. It's when you're doing the same thing, you get to when you're in a shop for so long, you get to a point where you do lose focus a little bit, and you need that change just to really open up the eyes again and get you all refreshed. Obviously, everyone needs a break after, so many years. A lot of butchers out there don't get the opportunity or can't afford to just take a month off or a month or so off just to down tools and do nothing for a month. But I think you've got to do that. You've got to force yourself to do it. You've got to put yourself in that position to do that. Otherwise, you burn yourself out. And we see that time and time again when butchers have been in a shop for quite some time and then they sell, and it might be somebody from outside of the trade that buys it, like an accountant or somebody that sees it as a great opportunity to make some quick money, and they buy it and they leave the butcher in there running the shop.
Yeah.
And like, because, well, they say, listen, mate, I'd like you to stay on. I'm going to renovate the shop. I'd like you to stay on and manage it for me. So the poor old butcher's now gone from just done the last 10, 15 years in the shop. He's had maybe a week off while they renovate, and then he's back into it again. So he hasn't had a lot of time to recharge the batteries, and it's that is a main thing, I think, for a lot of people, and a lot of reasons why guys get out of the trade is because they're just burnt out.
Yeah, no, I get that. I hadn't had, no different to many other butchers, really. I hadn't really had a proper break, since I was like 15, 16, and I just wanted a month out and reassess what I wanted to do, and it was lovely. But I also got the itch quite quickly. I got the itch that I wanted to do something. I don't cope too well with just plodding along and not doing much.
Yeah, I hear you. I remember when I started my apprenticeship in Adelaide when I was 16, and I was only in this one shop there in Central Markets for a few months before we moved to Sydney, and I thought, okay, well, mate, I was out of work for 3 days. We arrived in Sydney on the Sunday, and I was working on the Wednesday, so I was lucky enough to score a job that quickly. But I even though I'd only been working for a few months, but when you're that young and you're not used to working a full working week, was only for a few months, because being at school is a walk in the park compared to what it is working in a butcher shop.
Yeah,
you can get a bit tired, and I sort of only had 3 days or two and a bit days before I was back into it, and I learnt heaps, because with the shop I worked in, we didn't make sausages there. We had a factory where they were made.
Yeah, right.
We didn't even corn beef. We broke all our own. All the beef was brought in over Mondays. We had forequarters in. Tuesdays we get all the hindquarters in. Wednesday the lambs and the pigs and the veal. And when this was in Central Markets, where we do, I couldn't tell you how many bodies, but it'd be probably close to 20 bodies a week, and you're probably doing maybe 50 lambs, 60 lambs, and then you've got heaps of pigs. I don't know how many pigs, and then you've got calves. We had calves. We'd sell it by the side, like the lambs and the calves. We'd sell it by the side. They were just hanging up. If you've ever looked at the old black and white photos of old butcher shops, and it'd be exactly the same in England too, and you've just got all these sides of lamb and sides of veal. And
oh yeah, no fridges at all.
It was all hanging up there, mate, in the breeze. But to come from that to come into a little butcher shop at Forestville on the Northern Beaches, it was a real eye-opener, and I think it took me about 3 hours to make a batch of sausages, so I'd never made one before. And when the boss walked out, 3 hours later, he said, have you finished those stags? I said, oh yeah, just finished them. He said, well, tomorrow you're going to do that in half the time. I've gone, what? You're kidding? I didn't have any idea.
It's incredibly painful when you first start doing them, isn't it? It's a messy, horrible job, but it's all right once you get...
Yeah, and there was also the problem with electricity in that place too. I remember it was a 3-phase filler like most of the hydraulic ones are, and we had a problem with the power there, so every time you had to turn it off at the wall, you get a little tingle, so you sort of left it running for a little bit long, and the next time you went to turn off, you got a bigger tingle because it was getting very hot and something was shorting out somewhere, there was more water getting in somewhere.
Yeah.
Mate, when you were with Victor Churchill, they're so well known for their high-end quality meat brands, and Origin's pretty much the same, aren't they? But I suppose they keep the same brands you'd like to try and keep to the same brands?
Yeah. Like Chris is, he's kept quite a long commitment with a lot of producers, you know, and a lot of very, very good ones as well, like Cape Grim and Black Opal and Kinross Station Lamb. You know, we're quite heavily involved with now. You know, and they're really good names and good producers. We were doing it, but now we're just going through a process of renovations, working with small producers, getting in, you know, retired dairy cows and bodies of beef and dry aging, and we want to do a lot more small goods. But he's definitely kept a long-term relationship with a lot of producers as well.
The Kinross Station, the Hampshire Downs lambs that you spoke about before, we had a quick chat about them yesterday. For the listeners out there that don't know what they are, can you give us a little bit of the story around that product, mate?
Yeah, so he works with Hampshire Downs, and he's going through like a genetic program with them now, where, but basically, long and short of it, I think he's trying to get it into like the Wagyu of lamb. You know, to be honest, like a high marble score into muscular fat with them. And then, as I was saying to you yesterday, their genetics in them, they just make them a lot different than a lot of other lamb that's on the market. Well, they're a lot bigger for a start as well. We had some lambs in that we were breaking for the Delicious Awards, and they were coming in at 45 kilos, some of them. They were big old things. But as you would know, a lot of people that don't want to eat lamb, they don't eat it because they don't like the smell and, you know, that really strong lamb flavour that can come off of it, mostly while cooking. Whereas these are a lot fainter in that sense. It really is it's lovely lamb, beautiful lamb to work with.
Yeah, I was actually kicking myself. I only thought of it this morning. I thought I should have grabbed a couple of those lamb loin chops. They look bloody fantastic that were in the window there.
Yeah, I was going to say to you.
Not nice little bit of marbling in there and big eyes. And that's what I like about like a decent sized lamb. Okay, trade lambs are around about 22 kilos, roughly 22 kilos that most butchers use.
Yeah.
But I know when I do a demonstration or something, I always try and get something a little bit bigger, a 24 to 28 kilo lamb. You don't get many up around the 28s, but 24 is a good size still. That 45 kilo eye, like the eye of lamb alpha 45 kilo lamb, what sort of diameter would that be?
Yeah, they're quite a good size. You know, you're looking at, sometimes they can be about an inch and a half sometimes, the eye, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And with quite a high marbling as well. So
what sort of age bracket are they? Do you know that? How old the lambs are? Or are they sort of?
I don't actually know off the top of my head. No.
Be interesting to find out, to see what sort of how long it does take them to grow out. Whether they're a fast growing lamb or whether they do need that bit. It probably would need that little bit more age, but it also would come down onto the feed regime too, the nutritional feed that they're feeding them to as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was quite interesting as well. What Tom Bull said was, you know, after that 40 kilo mark, it doesn't matter how much you grow them. After about 40 kilos, he's found that the actual meat doesn't grow. It's all the outer muscular fat that just continues to grow. So
yeah,
you know, there's a point where you want to stop as quick as you can, I imagine, because it's just more and more trimming it and not any gain on the eye at all.
We did a job with the industry a few years back where it was all about, they call it the DEXA system, and it was measuring the fat content in the lambs and that. And we had 100 lambs to break down, and they'd all been on the same paddock for the same amount of time, basically from the day that they, and roughly within a few days in age, and the weight range was incredible. Like we had some come in at around about 15 kilos, little greyhounds, right up to, I think the biggest one we had would have been about a 35 kilo lamb. But they'd all been on the same feed for the same amount of time. They were roughly about the same age, but it was just purely the genetics of the lamb that changes the size of the carcass, you know. There might have been a few there that they weren't in with the big eaters. They were, you know, trying to diet to make themselves look good or whatever, I don't know, but they just at the short end of the paddock, and the other ones at the long end of the paddock. So it was amazing to see the difference in the size of them, and obviously breed does make a big difference in that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I hadn't worked with much Hampshire Downs before, but they're lovely, really good lambs to work with.
So what sort of beef? What's the beef that you mentioned, Cape Grim with Origin?
So that's a lot of the pasture fed beef. I mean, I'm sure everyone really knows Cape Grim. They've obviously built a great reputation over the years, but they're like the most of the pasture fed range that we deal with at the shop, you know, with our scotches and sirloins, short ribs, those and fillets. We get them all from Cape Grim, you know, really good, consistent Tasmanian beef. I get a little bit of Riverine as well, which is always very good. That's mostly all of our pasture-fed range that we deal with. But yeah, we're the shop being owned by a wholesaler, you know, Chris has made sure that, you know, we get everything, the best that they get in the wholesale that comes through. We make sure we get it at the shop for the retail, so I'm quick to nab it up.
So the shop's about to go through a renovation to give it a bit of a facelift and give you a little bit more room out the back. I saw your back section resembled about the same size as 2 telephone boxes.
Yeah, tight squeeze at the minute.
The shop front's going to get a reno. The back, you get a better place to play around with and make some more small goods and everything. So what sort of, you're not doing much value adding at the moment, which is, we always bark on about value adding on these podcasts, but it's such an important part of the butcher's repertoire to keep the customers coming back. So how do you look at it? What do you see to be more, I suppose, what consumers are looking for these days, what your customers, because you're in a really affluential area there, right? Randwick is it's a bit like, well, very similar to Willara. You know, you've got a lot of Porsches and BMWs and Maseratis and whatever flying up and down the streets.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing a lot more, but obviously we've lost the oven that we were using because the house is pretty much, it's been completely demoed at the minute. It's just being concreted back up.
Yeah.
But yeah, value add products are hugely important, and especially, you know, for our area, like, you know, busiest times for us other than weekends is that, you know, well, for everyone's, I'm sure it's the same, but that 5 to 6 period or the end of school period, people coming in, mums and dads, you know, really short on time, most of them jobs in the city, and, you know, they don't have time to cook. So like the pies, so Jen, Chris's wife, she makes all of the pies, and she does like 10-hour slow cook brisket. She also does like bolognese mixes. She does soups, masakas. You know, she does a lot. So we're missing that a big time at the minute. But, you know, they just fly out the door, obviously, because, you know, it's just literally just warm it up and it's done. We still do a few, we're buying in some great pies from a company called Miss Lily's, which we supply the meat for. So we still have some value add, not as much as I'd like at the moment, but yeah, it's like I said, it's just that little transitional period, but it's huge. And even little things, you know, like quick raw products, you know, are massively important, like marinated, you know, stir fries, split chickens, marinated chickens. We do like butterflied lamb legs, marinated. You know, basically anything that you can get done in 30 minutes or less.
That's the secret, isn't it? That's that 30-minute time frame for people to cook. That's very attractive to a lot of families, a lot of working couples.
Yeah, it's huge. And you know, people still do want to do their, you know, they want to do their braisers and slow cooks and big steaks, but, you know, it's more back end of the week when they've got a bit of free time. So, you know, that's obviously a huge part for us, but just at different ends of the week, really.
What would be the most popular value add product that you'd be selling in that shop, and why?
I mean, you've always got chicken schnitty.
Yeah, we don't talk chicken here, mate. Come on, this is beef and lamb. But I'll let you get away with it this time.
Yeah, we sell bucket loads of that. You know, what I stress at the shop, you know, everything, you know, just because it's schnitzel or kebabs or whatever, you know, we want to make sure that everything's the best it can be with those products to keep them, you know, it's like we were discussing the other day, it's easy that a lot of people, it's just like, oh, you know, it's just a little job in the corner, get it done. Doesn't matter, but we still want to put, you know, some love into those products, and
definitely
it shows because it flies out, it goes out even more, you know.
Yeah, I worked in a butcher shop a few years back on the coast, and we were doing a lot of chicken schnitty. And one day the butcher came up to me and he says, "What do you reckon if we do a beef schnitzel?" And I'm not saying that because we're beef and lamb. That's what he said. And mate, we sold them tray for tray after that.
Yeah,
we sold less chicken schnitzel, but you know, if we do maybe 2 or 3 trays of each schnitty every day. Like beef became very popular, and it came down to what he was always tenderizing it. We went through the tenderizer, so it was basically top sides, cap off toppies, cut them nice and thin, straight through the tenderizer. Just an egg wash, like the powdered egg wash that you get through your suppliers, and a golden crumb. That's the only difference between the two was, well, there was 2 differences. One was chicken and it was with white crumb, and the other one was beef with a golden crumb. And that's what the people love. They just love that golden crumb. We tried doing it in the normal breadcrumb once, and people didn't want it. They said we like those golden crumbs better. But just little things like that, just to make it a little bit more difficult. So you got to buy something else to put on the bloody shelves or get in, or sauce. But beef schnitty's one that not a lot of people think about. We sell veal schnitzel. We butchers sell a lot of veal schnitzel these days, I think.
Yeah, we go through a lot of that at the shop. Which is another weird one for me because, back home, veal, you don't really sell much of veal at all. But when you do, it's bobby veal. It's proper veal, very, very 3 months age, 4 months age. Whereas I've found here, I know it's classed as veal up to 12 months or, until it has its molars come through. But
yeah,
they really push it up to that, don't they, here?
Yeah, about 180 kilo carcasses, I think they actually get up to. Just with veal,
Yeah, right.
You see a lot of the brands out of Northern Rivers. They're at a casino. They do a lot of veal out that way. And you look at some of the product there. You look at some of the top sides. They are obviously, yes, they are a little bit redder than what you'd think for veal, but it's still classified as veal. But it's in the eating though. Like, okay, well, yeah, we buy with our eyes. But when you're looking at veal, I think it's the flavour of the veal because it's such a subtle flavour and it's always tender. One of the things I always remember, I can't remember the brand name what it was, but we used to get little veal T-bones and didn't look the best, but they were tiny, very dark. But man, did they eat well? They just ate so nicely, like as opposed to a sirloin or a beef T-bone, but they were more a better size portion, I think. And you could cut them a little bit thicker so they didn't dry out as much. Whereas the T-bone, as you know, if you got a 250 kilo body, those T-bones are going to be a reasonable size. So you don't want to cut them too thick unless they ask for them because of the price point. But going back to a smaller carcass, obviously your yields aren't going to be as great, but you're not buying whole carcass, you're buying primals. You're buying by the carton these days mostly. So buying those little T-bones worked out really well for us. So we sold quite a few of them and everyone was happy. But you don't see a lot of that anymore.
No, and it's really interesting. Like going back to the UK, like it wouldn't sell any of it. And then I think we used to sell topside, and that was it. And we'd slice it we'd cut it on the slicer for scallops. But people would turn their nose up at it and like, oh, you're selling veal here. I mean, the view of it here is completely different. It was quite odd to deal with when I first moved out because you would literally have a couple of people buy it in the UK, and it was very expensive. But then everybody else, it'd be like, oh, I can't believe you're selling veal. Here it's everywhere.
Yeah, you see it in a lot of butcher shops. It's not as popular as what it used to be. I remember one of my shops, I would have been in the 80s. I think we were selling veal for around about $13, $14 a kilo, veal schnitzel. And you'd spend, I don't know, you'd probably spend like a couple of hours or a good hour doing a pile of veal schnitty. So you'd be flattening them, you cut them, flatten them out, put them in the plastic, give them a little bit of tap down. They were in the slap sheets, so each slice was in a slap sheet. And you'd have a nice little pile there on the tray, and then you put it in there, and someone would walk in, they'd go, I'll have half a kilo of that, next one would go, I'll have a kilo of that, and then before you know it, shit, we've run out of veal again, and they want it, so you're always replenishing it. The thing I remember most about, the most popular time of the day we sold that was when mums was around that 2:30 to 3:30 period when mums were picking up the kids for school because it was seen as something quick and easy to do.
Yeah.
And then you get the cheeky ones say, can you crumb that for me, please, butcher? And they'd wet their eyelids at you. Yeah, no worries. Off you'd go out the back, grumbling under your breath, and then you come back, here you go, Mrs. Jones. But no, it's something I don't see a great deal of anymore in butcher shops, but I think they're obviously around. A lot of guys are still selling it, but I don't sort of generally look for it. But definitely something to keep in mind, even if you're doing beef. If you can't get veal, do beef. But I think there's plenty of that smaller beef around that you can sort of do some sort of either a beef schnitty out of it or a yearling schnitty even.
Yeah.
So Elka's a butcher too, you mentioned.
Yeah, so I met her. She came and worked a day with us when she first moved over from Belgium. She worked a day with us at Churchill, and then she was working for Vic's Meat Market for a little while, and then she moved over to Mr. Bailey & Co., who he's not open anymore, unfortunately, because that was a lovely shop, great guys. They were over in Roselle, so she was working with them for a while, and then she moved to Origin.
Okay.
She's not at the shop anymore. She's just over in the wholesale, which she was doing back in Belgium, so I think she's happier with that.
Oh, awesome, mate.
And she probably got sick of working with me day in, day out as well, which which I can't blame her for.
Well, Boo said the same thing yesterday too.
Yeah, I can be hard work.
Hey, he seems a nice guy, mate. You got a good worker there. He's good. You mentioned you guys go way back.
Yeah. We were born on beds next to each other in our hometown. That's how far back we go.
Wow.
He's been in the meat industry for a while now, probably 5-6 years. And he was working at Churchill as well. But he's really taken a keen eye to, really push on with Butchery. He's only been with me at the shop for a year and doing like whole bodies and everything like that. And he's like a sponge. He just picks it up lightning quick. His customer service was already there. He's great with customers and people, and they all love him. And yeah, now his butchery's really coming along as well. He learned a lot quicker than I did, that's for sure. Took me a lot longer. I'm a slow learner.
No, it's the shop's a credit to the pair of you, mate. It's a beautiful little shop. Okay, it's a little bit tired, but the meat that's in the case and the way you have it presented looked really good and very enticing. Actually, I walked in and I saw the sign out the front. My favourite steak, the hanger steak. I noticed you have them in the window as well.
Yeah.
And bavette. The bavettes you were talking about as well. You sell a lot of bavette.
Yeah. We sell a fair bit of bavette, a little bit of hanger. But hanger, I haven't really, only because I couldn't get hold of like a really nice one for a little while. So I haven't really had it in consistently. But like bavette, when I started, they didn't have it in the shop at all, and we sell a lot of it now. It takes a lot of time, getting people to try it, and those sort of cuts, once they've tried them and you tell them how to cook them properly and the right way to do it, then goes from there. But yeah, we go through a hell of a lot of bavette now, and it's a beautiful cut as well, so it's an easy sell.
Yeah. In the eastern suburbs, there's still a lot of people still cooking out there. Have you noticed any difference over the last couple of years, whether there's more people cooking at home or... Because a lot of those people out there in those areas do eat out a lot.
Yeah. COVID played a huge part. I'm sure every butcher knows during COVID it was just an absolute war, pretty much. It was
very much so.
Sales would have doubled overnight for most butcheries, I'm sure. A lot of people got even more into cooking. More and more people, since I've started Butchery, more and more people have got into cooking. That's for sure, and that's down to cooking shows and everything, and how easy it is to just get on YouTube now and find a recipe and cook it from that. It's just easily accessible. But definitely seen more and more people really, really love their cooking. I love cooking myself. So it's just a nice. I think for a lot of people, it's nice to switch off from their jobs, and maybe they don't want to do it every night after work, but switch off from work and just get some cooking going. Maybe have a glass of wine while you're doing it.
That's a good way to relax, mate.
Yeah, I love cooking myself. I'd never do it as a job, that's for sure. I'd never work in a kitchen, but I think I'd probably lose the enjoyment for it, if I'm honest.
I think you're right there. We have a chef work for us, and he does some pretty big events, and there's probably about 3 or 4 people that work with him. Well, we have one lady in particular, Julie. She works big time with our chef, with our corporate chef, and they do some big events. And the last thing you want to do is to be cooking for a couple of hundred people out there, and then turn around and go home and have to worry about cooking for yourself, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's it's a big job, and he always says how hard it is, and you see it in him. You see it in both of them, how they're just knackered at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I love cooking myself too. I actually got a message off my daughter this morning. She goes, I make a pretty mean pea and ham soup, and she goes, I think it's that time of the year, Dad. I think you should be making some pea and ham soup. And
that's a big thing we want to do at the shop as well, because it was a huge part. Like, great thing I learned, back at Churchill as well. I did butchery classes there for 7-8 years as well, like just for the general public and cooking classes. I found more and more as well, like a lot of people want to do that in their spare time as well, like butchery classes, which we're gonna this is what another thing we want to do when we relaunch in the near future. We want to start doing butchery classes again and some cooking classes. Good, more often than not, like from what I found at Churchill, more often than not it was like a lot of bankers and real estate agents. It's more like a staff party sort of thing. They'd do their team bonding, and we'd do a butchery class of like 8 to 9 people, and we did a lamb butchery class. They'd watch a demo, so I'd break down a whole lamb and then bone and roll the lamb loin. We'd debone a lamb leg, make them a little marinade up, show them how to make a little marinade, and and then you cook some of the products that you make that evening as well, and people loved it. I think that's a great thing, another avenue for butcheries, to make some good money.
Yeah, that's a very valuable add-on. It's a good add-on because you get there's so many companies these days, as part of their training or their business, they do have these team days, and looking for that. We do them ourselves.
Yeah.
Through our business. We have all of our new employees that come and work for MLA. We go through a induction, and part of that is learning about beef and lamb and where the cuts come from. So for me in the office, it's so much easier just to get a side of lamb or to get a whole lamb and then break that down rather than a side of beef. But obviously you can refer back to beef when you're doing lamb anyway, because the primals are still the same location, just the sizes are different and the flavour and the cost.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they get a lot out of it, and it encourages them to go and look at what they're cooking and what they're eating at home, and then try different cuts. So being able to utilise the whole carcass and have a meal dedicated to those specific cuts is very important for a lot of people, because you see it on the shelf in the butcher shop, and you go, I wonder what I can do with that. So giving them that little bit of extra knowledge there is crucial for your business as well, and being able to move your whole carcass.
Yeah, and I think from the butcher's point of view as well, like I remember for me, when I started doing the classes, what I learned from teaching them was huge, and my learning. I remember I did not want to do them at all, only because I hate public speaking. Like, this podcast was hard enough work today.
Doesn't appear to be, mate. Can't shut you up.
Yeah. In my first class they made me do, I look back now and it's brutal. In my first class that they made me do, I had people from head office, and I had Vic was there, and
oh no, pressure's on.
Yeah, the family were there, and I had to go up and talk to them before, and I was just, Darren said I was just white as, I'm already white as anything, but I was just white as a ghost.
Yeah, right.
I went up and I was fumbling my words, but I remember looking back to that, and then I look back at my last few that I did, and they're very enjoyable, and the people, when they're leaving, they're just, they always say the same thing, like, I really didn't know how much went into it, and into butchery, and they all enjoy it as well. And they're like, I see why you can do this as a job. It could be quite therapeutic, and it can be at times. It can't be at times too, but...
Yeah, no, you're right. It's always nice to get that bit of feedback after you do something, and people actually, how much they appreciate what you know. And the skill that you can show, and butchers like yourself out there that are so talented and skillful, and have such a great wealth of knowledge about the carcass and how to cook it. There's not many guys out there that can do all of that, as well as and explain it in a way where customers or consumers are going to listen and be able to understand. You've got to okay, we can talk about. I've dealt with guys that know all the Latin names for all the cuts. Like, from a consumer, they couldn't care less. They just want to know, how can I cook it?
Yeah.
What is it called? Where do I get it? And how do I cook it?
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. So, being able to translate that into just normal everyday terms is a real talent as well, mate. So, I love doing them. I love doing consumer events, because you can just see so many people get things out of it, and being able to do that in your butcher shop is a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really enjoy training. I'm fortunate, like I said to you yesterday, like every person I've trained under, I've been, because you hear some horror stories in butchery, don't you? Like through training, I've always been trained by great people, and I'm very lucky that happened, and I want to do it as well now. I kind of want to. I want to teach, so I'd love to get an apprentice in at the shop at some stage as well, and start again. Yeah, we just need more people coming through as well, I think, don't we?
Yeah, there's still a bit of a shortage of butchers around. Not as bad as what it was, I don't think. Maybe 12 months ago, we were getting phone calls every week from somewhere around Australia. Look, I need butchers. Do you know of anybody that needs a job?
I think one of them was me.
Actually, yes, it was. I saw that text the other day too. Yeah, yeah. But no, you're right. It's just tradespeople are so tight. There's all different types of butchers out there, but you just got to find the right one, don't you? You've got to find one that suits the butcher shop itself, who you're serving and the clientele. and what you're doing and their skill level as well, because you can still train them no matter what they are. Like I've always pushed, look, if there's a supermarket butcher coming into your business looking for work, hey, he's got knife skills, he's got knowledge of meat cuts, he's halfway there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because he can't make sausages doesn't mean he's not a butcher. Like, you can train people.
It's just attitude, isn't it? It's just, if they got the right attitude, then I'm happy to work with anybody if they've got the right attitude. You could get the best butcher in the world on the knives, but, it's not everything.
No, that's right. Well, mate, it's been really good to catch up again finally. It's been such a long time since I've actually seen you and had a good chat with you, and I'm just so glad everything's working out for you down there in Randwick at Origin, and you got a great team, and looking forward to seeing the shop once the renovations all go ahead, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be posting it on the gram and everything, so keep an eye.
Micky, thank you very much, mate. You take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
And you, thank you. Cheers, Doug.